It started with a pair of socks. Not the dramatic kind of clue you expect when your world begins to rot from the inside, but that's what it was. A stupid, insignificant thing. Blue socks in the dryer that didn't belong to me. They were too small, too thin, not my brand, and they smelled faintly of peppermint oil and some expensive cologne I didn't wear. I pulled them out with a kind of numb curiosity, like when you find a feather in your fridge or a spoon in the bathroom, something so obviously wrong that your brain pauses, trying to rewrite the rules to make it make sense. I didn't say anything. Not at first. You don't set fire to your life because of socks. Instead, I played it cool. That whole week, I started watching differently. Her hands moved faster when I walked in the room. Her laugh was an octave higher on the phone. She started using new words I'd never heard her say in 5 years, words like wild energy and alignment, and it just flows. I knew her tells. She's not someone who lies with words. She lies with the space between them. And then, the first real fracture, she started locking the bathroom door. It was Saturday night when everything unraveled. We were both supposed to go to our friend's engagement party across town. She spent half the afternoon pretending to look for her earrings while simultaneously texting someone under the dining table. I saw the glow. I saw her thumb twitch when I walked by. I told her we should leave by 6:30. She said she felt bloated, maybe she'd skip it and meet me later if she felt better. I agreed. Then I waited. I didn't leave. I sat in my parked car 3 blocks away and counted every second of silence. At 7:03, the lights in the living room flicked off. At 7:09, they turned back on. By 7:16, her phone location, which she forgot I could still access, suddenly showed location not available. At 7:21, I walked back to my own house with the quiet rage of someone who knows the blade is about to drop. No heavy footsteps, no grand entrance. Just the front door slowly turning under my hand like a dial on a bomb. Inside, it was dark. Not just I'm relaxing alone dark, it was deliberate. The living room had one candle lit. The TV was on with the volume low, paused on some random documentary neither of us would ever choose. Her purse was on the floor, not the hook where she always hung it. I didn't call out. I took off my shoes, left them by the stairs. And then I heard it, not moaning, not giggling, not the nonsense you expect in bad movie versions of this moment. It was the sound of a wine glass clinking against another, followed by a whisper and then laughter, fast and breathy, like two people in a rush to consume each other without needing to say much at all. I didn't rush in. I didn't storm upstairs. I stood at the foot of the steps and let it all wash over me. The betrayal. The stupid socks. The locked bathroom doors. And I smiled. Because I knew exactly what I was going to do. They didn't know I was home. They had no idea. And what I did next? Let's just say it made them both freeze like statues in the middle of their private play, and by the time I was done, they weren't just ashamed. They were terrified of what came next. I turned everything upside down. But not the way you think. The sound of her laugh from upstairs, that carefree, sugary tone, had always been my favorite thing about her. Until that night. Until I realized it wasn't meant for me. Not anymore. I took my time walking up those stairs. I didn't tiptoe. I made sure the floorboards creaked just enough. I wanted suspense. I wanted them to hear something, just not me. I stopped in front of the guest bedroom, the one we never used. The door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling out through the crack. I could hear his voice now. Low. Confident. A man too comfortable in a house that wasn't his. I didn't barge in. I had a better idea. I walked back downstairs, opened the front door, and slammed it loud. Suddenly, I heard a scramble. Feet on hardwood. A soft, oh my God, in her voice. Another voice, panicked, whispering fast. I turned the music on in the living room, loud enough to cover noise, but not enough to drown it all out. I set my keys on the table like I had just come back from a long, uneventful night. Then I took a bottle of wine from the rack, uncorked it, and poured a glass. Slowly. Deliberately. They needed to think I didn't know. Let them sweat. I waited exactly 5 minutes. I could feel their stress through the ceiling. Whispering, clothing rustling, a soft bump, probably him hitting something trying to get dressed fast. I pictured him trying to sneak down the hallway half-bent, shoes in his hands. Coward. He didn't know that every floorboard in this house had a voice. I knew where the quiet spots were. He didn't. Then came the real show. She walked into the kitchen like she was just stretching after a nap. Hair slightly mussed. A hoodie thrown over whatever she had on underneath. Her face twisted into this fake surprise, like she wasn't expecting me. "Oh, you're back early?" she said, voice light, too light, eyes blinking a little too fast. I looked right at her, took a slow sip of wine. "Yeah, didn't feel like staying long. Thought I'd rather be here." Silence. I tilted my head. "You okay?" She smiled. That brittle smile. "Yeah, just tired. I was watching that ocean documentary. Fell asleep." "You watch it alone?" She hesitated. "Not enough to catch unless you were looking." I was, "Yeah, of course." I nodded. "Cool." Then I walked past her, turned down the hallway to the guest room, and opened the door. And there he was, standing in the corner of the room, trying to blend in with the wallpaper. Tall, shirt inside out, holding one sneaker, one sock, and looking like he'd just come face to face with karma. I didn't say a word to him. Not yet. Instead, I turned to her. "You lied to my face," I said, calm like a surgeon before the first cut. "In our house, while I was pouring you soup and rubbing your temples, you were scheduling appointments with this clown." She stepped in between us, voice shaky now. "Listen, wait. It's not what you—" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I saw the socks last week. You remember that load of laundry you told me to stay out of? Too bad. Found something interesting, but I figured I'd wait. See how far you'd go." He opened his mouth. I stopped him with a raised finger. "Don't talk. Not yet." He closed it. She looked at me, cornered, chest rising and falling fast. I could see her trying to decide what card to play. Denial? Tears? Blame? She went with arrogance. "You left early to spy on me?" she asked, tone hardening. "You were testing me? What kind of sick game is that?" That was her move. Flip the script. Make me the villain. Gaslight her way out. "Yeah," I said. "Funny how that works. I set the trap, and you walked right into it. Hand in hand with this guy." She stared. Furious. Red. But behind the rage, embarrassment. She knew she was caught, and she hated not being in control. Then, finally, I turned to him. "You," I said, "have 2 minutes to get out of my house. You leave one sock behind and I burn it. You understand?" He nodded, muttered something that sounded like an apology, and practically tripped over himself running out the front door. I watched through the window as he sprinted barefoot down the sidewalk, clutching his things like a cartoon thief. I didn't laugh. Not yet. She stood in the hallway now, arms folded like a defiant child. "I guess this is it then?" she said bitterly. I smiled. The first real smile in weeks. "Oh no, this isn't it. Not even close. You think I'm just going to pack a bag and cry in the shower?" I walked up to her. "Close. Quiet. You broke the rules. So now we play by mine." And trust me, she had no idea what was coming next. That I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down. I walked through every room in the house like a museum curator inspecting relics before auction. I looked at the framed photos on the mantel. Her fake smile. Her hand wrapped around mine like she owned it. The vacation shot from Santa Fe, where she swore we'd start trying for kids. The picture of us at her sister's wedding. I touched each frame with the same care a butcher gives a knife before the first cut. She stayed in the bedroom. Doors closed. Not a word. Not an apology, not even a text. I knew she wasn't crying. She doesn't cry unless someone's watching. At 6 a.m. I went out for bagels. Not because I was hungry, I wasn't, but because I needed space to think. I needed to be around strangers who didn't know what was happening behind my front door. I paid in cash, left no tip, and drove back with the engine off at every red light. I was that wired, that focused. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, wearing one of my t-shirts like nothing had happened, making coffee, calm, composed. I stood in the doorway and watched her press the machine button like she wasn't living on a fault line she just created. Then she looked at me and said, "Can we just talk like adults?" I should have walked out, I should have let the silence answer for me. But I didn't. I stepped inside, leaned against the counter, didn't touch the bagels. She started with a sigh, a theatrical one, like I was the unreasonable one for making this uncomfortable. "Look, I messed up," she said, eyes darting anywhere but mine. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was lonely. You've been distant." There it was, the setup. You've been distant. Like I was to blame for her crawling into another man's arms in my house, in our guest bed. "You cheated," I said, flat. "In our home. I made a mistake," she said quickly, like she wanted to speed through it. "But we can work through this if you stop trying to punish me." "Punish you?" I repeated. I almost laughed. Then I pulled out my phone, because I had more than just suspicion. I had screenshots. I had recordings. I'd spent the last few weeks collecting digital dust behind her shiny Instagram life. And what I found, let's just say her Thursday night yoga sessions were never at the gym. I placed the phone on the table and hit play. Her voice. His voice. Not just that night. Multiple nights. Her laughing about me. Mocking me. Saying I was too slow to catch on. She froze. Face pale. Mouth open. No words came out. "That's what I wanted to talk about," I said. "Not your fake apology. Not your sudden clarity. I wanted to show you what I know." She went from shocked to cornered in 2 seconds. "This is private," she snapped, reaching for the phone. Pulled it away. "You don't get to scream privacy after turning our house into a sideshow." She backed up. "So what now? You want to humiliate me? Drag this through court?" "No," I said. "I want you to pack." She blinked. I nodded toward the hallway. "You're not staying here. Not after what you did. Not for one more night. I already talked to your sister. She's expecting you." "You told my family?" Her voice broke, not with sadness, with ego. "They deserve to know who you are. Especially your niece. She looks up to you. Or she used to." That one landed. Her shoulders dropped. But I wasn't done. I canceled all the shared cards. Changed the locks. "You've got till noon." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared, realizing for the first time that the game was over. That I wasn't going to beg for her to stay or ask what he had that I didn't. I wasn't playing defense anymore. And as she walked past me to start packing, I said one last thing. "Oh, and if your little friend comes back, tell him I still have his sock." The door closed behind her like the last scene in a film where the villain walks offstage defeated. But the story? That was only halfway through. Because now it was my turn to play .by noon. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Like after a storm when everything's still but the air is thick with what just happened. She left without a fight. 2 suitcases, 1 angry glance, no goodbye. She didn't ask for a second chance. She knew she wouldn't get one. I stood in the hallway where she used to leave her shoes scattered and took in the silence like a drug. It was peaceful but also unsettling. You don't just remove a person and expect the house to adjust. It creaked in the wrong places. It felt hollow, but I wasn't interested in peace. Not yet. I had something to finish. See, revenge isn't about screaming or smashing things. It's about calculation. Timing. Knowing when to strike and how deep. And lucky for me, she made a fatal mistake. She underestimated how much I'd noticed, how much I'd prepared. I didn't want just closure. I wanted clarity. And I was going to get it straight from the source. The guy. That same afternoon, I found him. He wasn't hard to locate. He had a very public profile filled with gym selfies, inspirational quotes, and a highlight reel of his coaching business. Life coach. Of course. The irony was almost poetic. I didn't message him. I did one better. I booked a session. Under a fake name. He didn't recognize me when I walked in. Not at first. I was just another client looking for direction. His studio was laughable, cheap decor, fake bamboo plants, and a Spotify playlist of lo-fi beats pretending to be wisdom. He had no idea the storm he invited through the door. "Hey man, I'm Kyle," he said, shaking my hand like we were about to build trust. "What can I help you with today?" I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You've been in my house." His face didn't register it immediately. It took a second. Then his smile faded. I didn't flinch. "I'm the husband," I added. "You know." The one who owns the bed you used like a cheap hotel room. He froze. Completely. A deer in headlights would have looked brave compared to him. I leaned back in the chair and smiled. Not angry. Just calculating. You don't need to say anything. I'm not here to fight. He blinked. Then, why are you here? To ask a question, I said. A real one. Why her? He looked around like he expected this to be a prank. Like cameras might pop out. I continued, was it a thrill? Power trip? Or did you actually think she was going to leave me and run off into the sunset with you and your motivational quotes? He finally spoke. It wasn't serious, man. It was just fun. I finished for him. Temporary? Disposable? He nodded slowly. I let that hang in the air. Funny, I said. That's how she used to describe you. That hit him harder than any punch would have. Because now he wasn't the player. He was the played. She used him. I knew it. And now so did he. I stood up to leave, but not before pulling a small envelope from my pocket. Here, I said, dropping it on the table. Her handwriting. A little note she wrote you last week. Said she kept it spicy, personal. I found it in her purse. He picked it up cautiously like it might explode. It's blank, he said, confused. I know, I said, already walking to the door. Just like whatever future you thought you had with her. I left him sitting there, completely dismantled. That wasn't vengeance. That was precision. A quiet dismantling of the illusion he helped her build. And it was only the beginning. When I got home, the house still smelled like her shampoo. But it didn't sting anymore. It smelled like a mistake that had finally been cleaned out. That I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to watch. I wanted her to feel it, the slow, deliberate unraveling of every piece of comfort she thought she still had in this world. Because people like her, they don't feel the consequences when you scream at them. They feel it when the silence gets louder than the noise ever was. She started texting 3 days later. First just one word, really? Then a follow-up, you're seriously doing this now? And then a call. I didn't answer. But she kept trying, and I knew why. Her sister must have told her. I paid her a visit. Not to gossip. Not to get revenge through family drama. I went to her sister's house because she had something Ashley didn't know I knew about. The storage unit. Ashley had been stashing things there for months. Not clothes. Not memories. Files. Contracts. A whole separate life she was quietly building while pretending we were fixing ours. She was planning to leave me. Eventually, but only once she'd squeezed every advantage out of me. The house, the financial stability, the status. And what she didn't know. The lease for that storage unit was in my name. She thought I'd never find out. I had the keys. I went there alone, late at night, and what I found told me everything. Letters. Hidden bank statements. Printouts of messages between her and three different men. One of them, married. Another, her business mentor. The third, the guy I already confronted. It was a collection of proof that she didn't just cheat. She built an entire strategy around it. Multiple exits. Different stories. Safety nets in every direction. Like she was playing chess on 5 boards, and I was just the idiot pawn she thought would never make it to the other side. Wrong. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't burn it. I copied everything. Scanned, documented, organized. Then I started the slow leak. Strategic. Targeted. The married guy's wife? Got a neat little package in the mail. Anonymous. The mentor's company? Received a formal complaint with screenshots attached. And the third? Well, he already got his dose of reality. And her? She showed up at my front door a week later. No call. No warning. Just standing there in a trench coat like some drama character, pretending she was still owed a conversation. I opened the door, didn't invite her in. You think you're clever, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Was that supposed to be a question or a compliment? She pushed past me. I didn't stop her. I wanted her to see what I'd done to the house. It was clean. Organized. Her stuff was gone, not trashed, just erased. She stopped in the living room. You sent that stuff to people? I shrugged. You left it where I could find it. You're ruining my life. No, I said. I'm revealing your life. She spun around, her voice rising. This is low even for you. You think this makes you look strong? No, I said, stepping closer. I think this makes me done. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Good. That's what I wanted. Because I wasn't the man she manipulated anymore. I wasn't the version of myself that tolerated her moods, her lies, her deflections. I was the man who saw her clearly now. For who she was. She started crying then, not real tears. Strategic tears. Crisis management tears. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. You didn't, I said. You meant to use me. The hurt was just collateral damage. She tried again, softer now. Can't we just fix this? I laughed. Quiet. Cold. You can't fix something you never intended to keep. And then I opened the door. Leave. Before I stop being nice. She left. For good this time. And I locked the door behind her, not out of anger. Out of relief. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. The day after she left for good. I sat in the center of the living room. Just me and the sound of the fridge humming in the background. The air was different now. Not just quieter, but heavier in a strange way. Like the house itself was watching me. Waiting to see what I'd do now that the war had passed and the silence settled in. I didn't fall apart. I didn't drink, or call friends, or sit in the dark replaying everything she said. I did something worse. I thought, for hours. Not about her, but about me. About how someone like me, sharp, responsible, careful, had been played for a fool by someone who didn't even bother to hide it well. That's the part that stuck. Not the betrayal, but how easy I made it for her. Like I'd been asleep in my own life, watching it through a window instead of living it. I pulled out the notebook I used for work. Clean pages, no emotion, and started writing. Not feelings. Facts. Timelines. Dates. Names. Conversations. Because even though she was out of my house, she wasn't out of my system. Not yet. I needed to see the shape of it. The anatomy of how she had worked her way into my life like a parasite with perfect teeth. And when I was done writing, I made a call. Not to a therapist. Not to a friend. To a lawyer. Not for a divorce. That part was already in motion. I had filed the papers before she ever knocked on my door that night. What I wanted now was more complicated. I wanted every single financial knot she had tied to me undone. Clean cuts. No leftovers. I didn't care how long it would take. I was going to erase her. While that process started, something strange happened. People began reaching out. People I hadn't heard from in years, friends she had subtly pushed away, family she had smiled at while poisoning behind my back. My cousin Mia called and said we always knew something was off, but we didn't know how to say it without sounding like jerks. My former coworker James? He sent a message. Saw your ex's little meltdown online. Damn, man. You handled that with style. Turns out, she had started posting cryptic little notes on her stories. Half apologies, half pity bait. People always judge without knowing the full story. Healing isn't linear. And my personal favorite. Some people only love the idea of you. Classic deflection. But what she didn't realize. I had the receipts. Literally. Screenshots. Documents. Audio files. And I wasn't just sitting on them. I was compiling. Not for revenge. Not to destroy her socially. But because I knew, one day she was going to spin the narrative hard. Probably to someone new. Another guy, another job opportunity, maybe even a podcast. She'd twist it so that she was the one who was abandoned, gaslit, betrayed. And I wanted to be ready. Not to prove her wrong to strangers. To prove myself right. For when the doubts would creep in at night. Because they always do. Even when you know the truth. Even when you have proof. There's still that quiet whisper. Was it really that bad? Did I overreact? Could we have fixed it? No. I'd open the file and remind myself it wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And I broke it. But the best part? The final move I made that week. I took our old anniversary date, a date that used to make my chest tighten, and scheduled something completely different on it. I booked a solo trip. Somewhere far. Somewhere she never wanted to go because it was too quiet. A cabin in Oregon. Wood-burning stove. Trees. No Wi-Fi. Just space. Real space. Because if she built her escape plan while pretending to stay, I was going to build my real freedom by leaving everything she ever touched behind. And the moment that plane lifted off the ground, I didn't think of her once. Not for guilt. Not for longing. I was already flying towards something better. She called me from a new number 2 weeks after I landed in Oregon. I let it ring out. Then again, 10 minutes later. Voicemail this time. I need to talk to you. It's important. I'm not trying to start drama. Something happened. Please. Just this once. I didn't reply. Not because I wasn't curious, but because she thrived in urgency. It was always her favorite weapon. Create pressure, make it seem like she was the victim of the moment, yank people into her storm so fast they didn't realize they'd been spun into her chaos until they were halfway drowning. So I waited. Let her stew in the silence she once wielded like a sword. That night, another call. No voicemail. Then a message, if you don't pick up, you're going to regret it. Ah, there she was. The mask slipping. So I answered. Not because of the threat, because I wanted to see what her version of important looked like now that her empire was in ashes. Finally, she snapped, skipping any kind of hello. You've got 90 seconds, I said. There was a pause, and then she launched into it. The guy. The married one. His wife came after me at work. She screamed in front of clients. I almost lost my job. That's unfortunate, I said flatly. She scoffed. Don't do that. I know you were behind it. I didn't make you sleep with him. I just gave someone the truth. Well, now he's blackmailing me, she said, voice tightening. I paused. Blackmail? She sighed like it physically pained her to admit vulnerability. He said if I don't convince his wife that it was just emotional, just texting, he'll leak stuff. What kind of stuff? I asked. Silence. Photos? I asked. More silence. How thoughtful of you to leave breadcrumbs for every version of your downfall. She snapped again. You don't get it. He's dangerous. I thought I could handle it, but you thought you could manipulate him like you did me, I cut in. Only this time, you picked someone more twisted than you. That landed. She went quiet. Completely. You don't care, she said finally. You're just enjoying watching me fall. I actually laughed at that. No. I'm enjoying not having to catch you anymore. Her voice softened like she was switching tactics mid-conversation. I'm scared. I thought you of all people you need help, I interrupted, but not the kind I can give. You need lawyers. Therapy. Maybe a detox from attention. But me? I'm not your lifeline anymore. She tried again. If this goes public, you're worried about your image, I said. But you lost your character a long time ago. That's what people remember. Not what gets posted. Who you are. Then I ended the call. Blocked the number. That night, I sat by the fire in the cabin, staring into the embers, and realized her downfall had nothing to do with me anymore. I wasn't driving it. I wasn't even guiding it. I had simply walked away. And without me there to hold up the illusion, it collapsed under its own weight. But the twist? What she didn't realize, couldn't have, was that her lies weren't just personal. One of them was legal. And that storm? It hadn't hit her yet. But I saw it coming. 3 days after I blocked her number, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A physical letter, hand-addressed, no return address, written in the same looping, forced handwriting she used when she wanted to appear vulnerable. The envelope smelled faintly like her perfume. A pathetic trick. Like scent would trigger some kind of nostalgic weakness in me. I opened it anyway. Inside were 3 pages. 3 long, bleeding pages. No greeting, no dear anything. Just a flood of carefully curated sentences that sounded like apologies but weren't. Not really. They were calculated wounds disguised as confessions. She admitted to things she thought I already knew, which ironically only revealed how much deeper the rabbit hole went. Apparently, while we were still together, she'd used my name to co-sign on a business loan. A loan I never saw, never agreed to, never signed for. But the paperwork, according to her, was just a formality, and she didn't think it would matter. $35,000. Tied to my name. To a creative wellness studio she and one of her men had been dreaming up behind my back. A startup that didn't even have a physical address. Just a website, some Canva logos, and her voice promising sacred spaces for energetic realignment. It wasn't a business. It was a lie with a payment plan. And that's when it hit me, she forged my signature. Now this wasn't just betrayal. It was a felony. I didn't call her. I didn't respond to the letter. I called my lawyer and forwarded him every document I had, including the scanned loan paperwork she'd tucked away in her little storage unit, thinking she'd swoop in with success and sweep it all under the rug before I'd ever notice. His response was immediate: "We've got enough to pursue criminal fraud." But even then I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to see her finally face real consequences, but because part of me knew this wouldn't just ruin her reputation, it would destroy her entire existence. She'd lose her job, her license, her ability to sign anything without scrutiny. She'd be branded. But then I remembered how casually she laughed in those recordings. How carelessly she wrote off every lie. How she mocked me. "He's sweet, but he doesn't pay attention. He's safe." Safe. She used me like a financial ghost, a name without a spine. And suddenly, I didn't hesitate anymore. I gave the green light. And here's the delicious irony: while the legal machine slowly started its work, I made sure she didn't see it coming. I left her blocked. Didn't send a single warning. No cold message, no final confrontation. I just disappeared from her radar completely. Because the worst thing you can do to someone like her isn't scream. It's go silent while the consequences start knocking. A week later, my lawyer called again. The bank had already flagged the signature. They were opening an investigation. If she was smart, she'd run. But she wasn't smart, she was entitled. She thought this would blow over like everything else. She'd lie, blame confusion, claim I knew deep down. She might even try to play the victim again. But this wasn't my arena anymore. This was court now. Real judges, real evidence, real consequences. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. I just had to sit back and let the truth do what it does best. Burn.it started small, like all collapses do. A freeze on one of her accounts. A flagged transaction. A call from her bank requesting verification regarding an outstanding co-signature discrepancy. I didn't have to hear it. I knew how it would unfold. Because I built the stage she was now stumbling across in heels too high. Surrounded by paperwork she didn't understand and decisions she couldn't charm her way out of. 3 weeks after I handed everything to my lawyer, I got an alert. She'd been served. Not at home. At work. Mid-meeting. Right there in front of her team and a client she'd been courting for weeks. 2 envelopes. 1 civil suit, 1 criminal inquiry. You'd think she would have gone quiet after that. Maybe finally disappear. Reflect. Regret. Not her. The next day, her sister sent me a screenshot. Her social media was on fire. Vague posts dripping with bitterness and denial. When people are threatened by your light, they'll try to dim it with lies. Sometimes love turns into obsession, and healing means walking away from toxic cycles. Classic misdirection. She was crafting a narrative, testing the waters with her followers to see who would believe her version, the one where I was the villain, some unhinged ex trying to ruin her life because I couldn't handle being left. But lies don't hold up under pressure. Especially not when the truth starts landing with the weight of subpoenas and formal statements. The turning point came faster than I expected. One of her business partners, someone I hadn't even known about, flipped. Quietly reached out to my lawyer, offered to testify. Said she'd manipulated him into investing with the same fake promises. Said she claimed I'd backed the whole thing and was their financial anchor. He showed us emails. Voice notes. It was damning. But the most satisfying part? She'd copied and pasted the same sales pitch she'd used on me. Word for word. Her empire was built on templates. And now it was falling apart in front of her. When the DA's office officially opened a case file for fraud, identity theft, and potential tax evasion, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to karma or post cryptic quotes. I went for a run. 5 miles. Through the woods. In the rain. Because I needed to feel something real again. My muscles burning. My lungs pulling sharp air. Every step forward felt like a shovel digging her out of my chest. I wasn't chasing justice anymore. I was reclaiming peace. The best part? No one called me a hero. No one handed me a medal. But people noticed. A friend I hadn't spoken to in a year texted, "I don't know the full story, but damn, you handled that with class." A former colleague messaged, "Heard about everything." She always seemed off. "Glad you're out." Even her own cousin messaged me, "We're not talking to her anymore." She lied to everyone. Just wanted you to know we see it now. Validation wasn't the goal. But when it comes uninvited, pure and quiet like that, it means more than the loudest "I told you so." And as for her, she started reaching out again. Not directly through people, through shadows. Little messages passed along in hope that I'd respond, or at least feel something. I didn't. She wasn't a person to me anymore. She was a chapter. One I read too long, annotated too much, and finally closed with both hands. But the last page? Still coming. Because court is scheduled. Testimonies will be heard. And she'll have to sit there under oath and finally say it all out loud. Every single lie. And the world she curated so carefully? It won't just crumble. It will collapse. Publicly. Permanently. You ready for the final part? The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Sterile, almost clinical. No drama, no thunder. Just rows of benches, quiet tension in the air, and the dull scratch of pens on legal pads. The judge didn't look like justice. He looked like a man who'd had too much coffee and too little patience. But that was fine. I wasn't there for poetry. She walked in 5 minutes late. Of course she did. Wearing beige, soft makeup, hair pulled back to say, "I'm harmless." A look she crafted like a costume, hoping to soften the truth. She scanned the room, eyes grazing past me, trying not to flinch. But she did. Her eyes dropped the moment they met mine. She knew. She wasn't there to defend herself. Not really. She was there to perform. The case was clean. My lawyer had put together a mountain of evidence. The forged signature, the falsified loan documents, the emails confirming her deception, the business partner's testimony, the financial trail. Her empire wasn't just a web of lies. It was a straight path of premeditated fraud. But what hit her hardest was what I didn't do. I didn't testify. I sat in the back, silent, still, because I wanted her to see it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. And they didn't need my voice. They had her fingerprints. The judge was merciless. Not unkind, just precise. He read through everything aloud, slowly, methodically. Every count, every number, every piece of evidence she thought was buried, locked, hidden. Her voice cracked on the third question. She tried to spin it, said she had my implied consent, that we were collaborating, that I had agreed in spirit even if I hadn't signed physically. Her lawyer looked like he was trying not to roll his eyes. Then they brought out the digital timestamp from the scanned contract. The signature had been uploaded from her laptop at 2:17 a.m. on a night I was in another city, proven by a hotel check-in and plane ticket. That was the kill shot. Silence in the room. She went pale. Verdict? Guilty. Civil damages granted. Criminal charges pending review, likely to stick. Restitution ordered. Public record sealed for now, but the impact? Permanent. She looked back at me once as they gathered the papers. And I didn't blink. Not out of spite. Not to be cold. But because she wasn't a storm anymore. She wasn't chaos wrapped in perfume and excuses. She was a memory. A warning. A lesson carved in paperwork and scars. When I walked out of that courtroom, the sun was low, cold on my skin. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt weightless. Like someone who'd finally dropped the anchor he didn't know was dragging behind him for years. Later that night, I sat in my kitchen, just me, a glass of water, and a silence that didn't ache. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt mine. And I thought about how this all started. One moment. One lie. One shift. But now? It was over. If you're reading this and you feel like something's off in your relationship, like your gut is whispering when your brain is trying to be polite, listen to it. People like her don't destroy you all at once. They do it in inches. In borrowed time. In smiles that don't reach their eyes. Catch the lie early. And if you don't, make sure when you burn it all down, you're the one holding the match.